What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today, with OP-09 right on the horizon, about to release, it's time to talk about the best cards to pull from OP-09. This is not intended as a top 10 list of the most expensive cards in the set, where I give you values and all of that, because we're not there yet. We need to wait for the set to actually release in English before we can really get a proper top 10 list going and start thinking about exact values. What we can do, however, is have a look at what's happened over in Japan, have a look at some approximate and proportional values, i.e. what are the most expensive cards in Japan, how are they compared to others, etc. And then from there, we can start having a look at what exactly you should be delighted about pulling when you open your packs of OP-09. Sound like a plan? Excellent. Because this is usually the part of the video where I would tell you, manga rare. Just look for the manga rare, but in OP-09 it's not that simple. Because there are 4 manga rares. So let me be nice and clear. Luffy. You want manga rare Luffy. And look, I know most of you probably could have guessed that you want manga rare Luffy. It's not exactly the hardest prediction ever to make. But if we have a look over in Japan at how things have been going with OP-09, it's not a close run race. Luffy is, by a bit of a margin, the most expensive of the manga rares. Currently sitting at about 200,000 yen, which is actually incredibly high. Like, for comparison, the lore I showed you from OP-10 the other day is sitting at 80,000 yen. And we can have a look at the rally from OP-08, which is sitting at 50,000 yen. 200,000 yen is incredibly high, and it's not actually the highest. Obviously, the highest we're talking about here is the Luffy from OP-05. That is actually the biggest one, but make no mistake about it, Luffy is an exceptionally high manga rare. This is one, we all want to pull the manga rares. Any manga rare you pull is going to be a great pull, but Luffy, even in amongst manga rares, is a particularly sought after manga rare. For comparison, the Luffy from OP-05 in Japan is sitting at 400,000 yen, which is double, but this is pretty much like the second biggest manga rare we've seen so far. In terms of the other manga rares, they are obviously still worth picking up. Shanks is a clear number 2, currently sitting at about 150,000 yen. So again, significantly higher than your average. It's like double Trafalgar Law, treble Rally. And Shanks is a very playable card, so that does very much help. But Shanks is the number 2 manga rare, and again, it's a pretty clear number 2 in terms of manga rares here. It is Luffy, and then it is Shanks, and then the others are coming in behind. We got Martial D Teach coming in at 80,000 yen, which is actually still, and I'm only giving you the Japanese prices here so you can compare them to each other. If I tell you that Luffy is 200,000 and Shanks is 150, then that says that, Luffy should be somewhere around a third of the price of extra of Shanks. Whereas if I tell you Martial D Teach is 80, then that's kind of half of what we see from Shanks, and Luffy is like 2.5 times Martial D Teach. So don't worry too much about the Japanese prices, but there is a comparison here which I think is important. And yeah, 80,000 yen for Martial D Teach is quite high, and then Buggy also comes in at about 80,000 yen. Basically, Buggy and Martial D Teach are coming in at roughly in line with your average manga rare. Shanks is coming in at about double your average manga rare, and Luffy is coming in at 2.5 times your average manga rare. But let's be honest with you, they're not the biggest cards in the set now, are they? No. We've got the 4 manga rare, and they're all very much cards you should be looking to pull, don't get me wrong, but the big card in the set is the Gol D Roger. And I know there is a big discussion at the moment, and we'll probably do a more in-depth video about this in terms of the specific price in English, but not until after it's actually released and we got some data to go on. But for the time being, I can tell you that in Japan, it is 500,000 yen, or to put it another way, 2.5 times the OP-09 manga Luffy. Or to put it another way, about 20% higher than the OP-05 Manga Luffy. And that is incredibly relevant. It's still above the OP-05 Manga Luffy. You should be expecting to pay more than the OP-05 Manga Luffy, and that is kind of on release, which is wild to me, but it's a gold manga rare. The pull rates are lower. This is what happens. In terms of an accurate price, again, going by Japan, what we should be able to do is just take 20% of the value of Manga Luffy from OP-05, add it to the price of Manga Luffy from OP-05, and that should then represent what you should be paying. Is it going to work like that? Heck no. But that is what we should be doing here. So that's an obvious one. That is the big card in the set. The manga rares, I've told you about those and exactly the order in which you should be looking to pull them. What else have we got outside of the huge hits? Well, we've actually got a bunch. Now, we've got two types of special rares here. We've got the, what I like to call the OP-05 style, and then we've got the OP-09 style, the new wanted posters. The wanted posters win generally. So if we go through the what should be the rough order of special rares, the big one here is your wanted poster of Luffy. Wanted poster Luffy is the big one here. That is the number one special rare that you should be looking to pull from the set. And again, a large part of this is the fact that it is, as you might have suspected, Luffy. But the number two is actually not one of the wanted posters. It is just, only by a tiny margin, but it is your Nami. And look, it's Nami. That's your explanation. And it's the Nami from OP-08. It's a decently playable Nami, don't get me wrong. But general rule here is, it's Nami, people love Nami, Nami is a very, very, very big deal. So, essentially, Luffy is the big one in terms of your wanted posters. Nami is your big one in terms of your OP-05 style, but the wanted posters are bigger than the regular one. And we can keep this rolling. The second biggest of the wanted posters is Shanks, but it comes in at half the price of Luffy. Luffy is 30k, Shanks is 15 in terms of yen. And then the second biggest in terms of your other style is your Boa Hancock, which comes in at about 13,000 yen. So again, the second biggest wanted poster, Shanks, is more than your second biggest OP-05 style, which is Boa Hancock. Although I should mention that over in Japan right now, Marshall D. Teach, the wanted poster, is actually tied with Boa Hancock. They're both at about 13k, but I would expect Boa Hancock to be a little bit higher because Hancock's seriously bigger than Marshall D. Teach in terms of popularity of characters. And then finishing up the rest of them, the lowest of the wanted posters is Buggy at about 8k. And then the lowest of the OP-05 style, you've got Zoro Juro, which is coming in at about 6. And then the other three are all tied on 4, which is your Rob Lucci, your Don Quixote Rocinante, and your Monkey the Dragon. Those are the three where you got your special rares, but you didn't win the special rare lottery. It really is, Luffy, Nami, and Shanks. They are your big three in terms of special rares. But your general rule is that your wanted posters are more sought after, more valuable than your regular special rares. Now, in terms of leaders, it's a little bit confusing. There are two big leaders, and you're talking about Shanks and Luffy. They are your alternate art leaders that everybody really wants. They are the two big uns. So, if you pull an alternate art leader, cross your fingers for them. And the thing is that Shanks is like a really good card. The early OP-09 flagships were dominated by Shanks, although it hasn't been winning the bigger tournaments lately. That's another one we'll get to in a minute. Whereas Luffy is more of a fringe deck. It's a good, decent, viable deck, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of winning the odd flagship here and there. Shanks has proven so far to be the superior deck. But they're both tied on like 6,000 yen. For comparison purposes, that puts it right in line with Zoro Juro as an underwhelming special rare. The special rares are still significantly, on average at least, more sought after than your alternate art leaders. So they're your two big uns. The other one that people really want is, well, I say really want, the other decent one here is your Marshall D. Teach. Still comes in lower than the lower special rares, but this is probably the best deck from OP-09, at least the best new deck. It won the biggest tournament in Japan recently, so yeah, people just don't really like Marshall D. Teach is what I'm learning here. It's probably the best deck here. If we go by playability, it should be Shanks and Blackbeard, but it's actually Shanks and Luffy with Blackbeard bringing up the rear. And then you got Buggy, who's a bit behind them, and Nico, Robin, and Lim, who are far behind them. The thing is, Nico Robin, I've seen it winning a few flagships, although it's not on the same level as the other leaders, mostly. Lim has been roundly terrible up to now, but is starting to round into shape with OP-10, so keep an eye on Lim. Lim could be a good deck moving forward. Now, they're the kind of your big headline cards, although it very much goes gold manga, regular manga, special rares, but I've told you the order for them, and then your full art leaders. What have we got in terms of regular alternate arts that aren't your really big hits, but are just your ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill alternate arts? There really isn't very much. Alternate art Shanks and alternate art Blackbeard are your top two here. That's just because they're really, really playable and people like them. They're coming in at like 2,500, 3,000 yen, so on the lower end of your alt art leaders. They're not particularly great value-wise. And they're like the big ones here. There really isn't much else. The alternate art Uta is worth it. The alternate art Law is alright as well. They're both slightly higher than average, I suppose. But yeah, generally speaking, the regular alternate arts here, you're not going to be struggling to pick either of those up. Even the alternate art secret rares, your Luffy and your Gol D Roger, are kind of up your high end. You know, they're generally a little bit below your, well, like your Blackbeard, for instance, your alternate art. So the general alternate arts, there really isn't very much here. This is a top-heavy set. But then again, you know, even your regular sets, there really isn't very much in terms of regular alternate arts. It is rare that a regular alternate art is moving the needle here. This is very much a case of you've got big hits in this set. Then you got a bunch of kind of decent hits. And then after that, it's a little bit barren. But let's make no mistake about it. And I've said this before, let me say it again. This is the big set. Like, in terms of value and all of that, this is the biggest set we've had. This is the real headline set of the One Piece TCG so far. Bigger even than OP-05, which up till now was the big headline set. So make no mistake about it, this is still a very big deal. It just so happens that it's, yeah. We get so distracted by the top-heavy stuff, the rest of it is a bit meh. But actually, some of this would still get decently high up when we talk about other sets. It's just that in this set, we have got a lot at the top end. There are a lot of good hits to get. If you were ever looking to go in on a set, go hard on a set, this is probably the one to go for. But I've told you all about this now, so now it's over to you guys. Tell me what you think about all of this. Tell me your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions. Tell me what you've already pulled if you've managed to, or what you want to pull later. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about One Piece and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourself till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.